Keeper Leagues are now a part of AFL Fantasy. We're excited. A lot of people are excited because people have been banging on the door wanting this. And one of those people is a man that is a genius, an expert, something that we're not when it comes to Keeper Leagues. We want to find out all about them. We are welcoming in Heff from the Keeper League Podcast. How you doing, mate?
Good, mate. Genius is a strong word. I don't know about that, but someone who likes to indulge in a Keeper League or two, that's for sure.
Well, that's pretty much what Calvin is as well. He just indulges in fantasy football and calls himself an expert. I think his Twitter bio says that.
God, dog, you're not here to bag me out.
Well, we've got to do something now. So, Keeper Leagues, let's talk about what they are. Because it could be people that are listening.
Hey,
well, Calvin's here,
present.
that have no idea what a Keeper League is.
All right, so a Keeper League is sometimes also known as a dynasty league as well. It's a draft style league where instead of drafting a new team every year, you keep a player or you keep your players heading into the next season. So at the end of the season, you select which players you want to keep in your team, choose which players you want to delist, and then you basically top up your list each year with the draft of the players remaining in the unlisted players pool. So effectively, you become like a virtual list manager of a fantasy team, one that kind of runs long term.
Okay, so if you're starting a Keeper League for the first time this year, who might be some of the first players that you would pick?
Well, you always got to go a captain option to start off with, I think. Well, we'll talk about settings and stuff like that, but most leagues play with captains on, so you've got to go with a captain option. Like a lot of the time, you want to pick one of your Grundys or your Gawns if you're up the top because rucks are hard to come by. Also, you want to be thinking about your defenders and stuff like that, so Lockie Whitfield makes a good choice, but as long as you've got a captain option each week, somebody's going to pump out a ton and things like that, I reckon they're always good choices.
So is age a bit of a factor in picking that guy, though? Is that something you think of when you start up a Keeper League?
Yeah, it depends on your strategy, but it can be. So generally you want to pick someone who is in, I guess, the prime of their career, was still a few years ahead of them. You don't want to pick, blokes, 30 plus, that sort of stuff straight up, but there is value in those players as well.
So the kind of guys I was thinking, if I was going to be starting one, I was thinking Matt Rowell, Sam Walsh, right up the top of my pecking order. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, it can be. So generally, like I said, you generally want the guys with runs on the board first up because you never know what can happen. Now, blokes like Walsh and Rowell, showing a lot of promise for young players, but who knows when, especially Rowell coming back from that injury and stuff like that, there's always this long-term element that you do need to think about, but at the end of the day, you still need to score points as well. So captain option first, but then definitely start looking at your young guns after that.
Yeah. So guys like that, they're going to go higher in a Keeper League draft than what they would in a normal single season draft, and it's, I guess, where you prioritise that. So do you try to balance that list when you are drafting for your initial team? Because I hear different strategies. Some people like to go, I'm just going to pick this team as if I would a single season draft, and that's probably not a bad place to get started, and then you can make your moves around that. But when the last one that you did, what was your strategy in drafting your initial draft side?
Yeah, my initial draft was always balanced, I guess. So blokes, that 24, 25, 26 kind of age range, guys that are going to play for another at least 5, 6, 7 years, that type of thing. They're the guys I tend to go for in those drafts. But I have done drafts where I have made a play for, just trying to win the first premiership, I guess. So, someone's always got to win the first one, and it's always good to get the monkey off the back as well. So you can go the complete opposite direction as well and just draft normally. And you'll get a lot of good players as sliders as well. So it's something else to think about. There's a lot of strategy in that initial draft, I think.
And when you set up your league, so your commissioner, and we're going to not let Calvin commission any of our leagues based on some of the conversations we've already had, what sort of squad sizes do you like for a Keeper League? What are the structures that you have there? And then even thinking a little bit further forward, because you don't make these decisions now as part of the AFL Fantasy platform, but how many keepers do you like going from year to year, or what percentage of your squad?
Yeah, so we, in my home league, I guess we do half of our league. So we have a squad size of 32 and we keep 16 of them. And then we have a few supplementary players on top of that in mid-season drafts and stuff like that. But we generally keep about half. That said, there's how many you keep really makes, I guess, how the game is played. So, for example, if you have 10 teams in your league and you've got 40 players on each team, that's 400 players gone in the draft. So you might want to think about keeping less so there's more of an even turnaround each year in terms of who can win the flag. So if you keep less players, there's more chance of quick turnarounds arounds, rebuilds and things like that. Whereas if you go really deep, so I play in a couple other leagues where we only have to make 3 list changes a year in a squad of 40. It can take a long time to rebuild a list. So you need to think about these sort of things, how committed players are going to be. If someone's down the bottom of the ladder for 3 or 4 years straight, they might want to jump off. So these are the things you need to think about. But I generally think around squad size anywhere between 30 and 40 is generally pretty good, and keeping around half your list.
So when you're starting up your league, you want to get some good committed mates and at least sort of that buy-in for, 4 or 5 years to make it all happen, I suppose.
Yeah, you need to make sure your mates are committed, because nothing's worse than starting a league a couple of years in, someone quits and you need to find a replacement coach. And quite often the people that drop out are the kind of blokes that neglect their team a bit, or they're not the type of bloke that takes fantasy that seriously. So they've let their team go over the few years, made some shocking trades, some shocking draft picks, and it can also be hard to get someone in to take over that team once that's happened. So you really need to think about who's in your league and are they the right type for your fantasy league.
So maybe having keeping fewer players. So if you did have a squad of 30, for example, maybe just keeping 10 could keep some of those coaches engaged a bit more, because they actually get to turn over a fair chunk of their list each year. That could be some discussions to have over those beers in the esky, I reckon, as you prepare for your league.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, sometimes if there's less players kept, the 10 players that you generally would keep, use that as an example, it'd be pretty even between the teams. Everyone should have 10 good players at least. So if you keep less, it can turn over a bit more. But, yeah, there's definitely a lot of different things you want to think about when starting your league. Should we go through a few of those, do you reckon?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so, I guess the first thing I'd probably assume that you need is a good commissioner. So you need to decide who this is going to be. You need to decide on this early as well. You need to make sure they're a super organised person, because they're going to be very busy, and they need to be fair and trustworthy as well, because nothing's worse than a commissioner that manipulates a league to suit their team or benefits them. So you got to be careful with that. We've been through committed mates. That's very important. Now, the big one here is set the rules early. So we've made the mistake before of not setting the number of keepers we keep before the season began. And that caused a lot of dramas in the group chat. And you'll learn a lot about group chats once you start a keeper league, but you've generally got a bunch of very passionate fantasy coaches in there. So things can kick off if rules aren't set and things aren't going people's way. People always try to set, exploit loopholes, and if the rules aren't clear as well, it might cause a few dramas in your league. So make sure you set the rules and make sure they're clear. Have a document, or make sure they view it on the fantasy website so they know what the rules are, so there's no dramas later on.
Now, Heff, did you say the commissioner needs to be organised, trustworthy and honest?
That's correct, Calvin.
Okay. Just checking.
Application has been declined, Calvin.
Just checking. Asking for a mate.
Well, thanks heaps, mate. This is awesome info, and we'll probably look at this a lot more over the pre-season, especially for coaches that are keen and getting their mates together into a league. Final sell of Keeper League. Why should you do it? Why do you like the Keeper League concept, maybe over the other types of fantasy?
Well, basically it's for the fantasy diehards, really. And if you like the idea of list management or coaching like a dynasty, I guess this is for you, really. You can make your league essentially emulate the AFL with the way, trades, the listings and the draft, how it all works. So you can kind of emulate that. But it's just good fun. Your Keeper League league mates become like your best mates. You're talking to each other each day on a group chat. So it's all about that kind of that vibe as well, and the funny times that happen with that. So, that's why you should play them, I reckon.
Heff, that was the opening of a bonbon, and here comes a joke just for you, my friend.
All right.
What do you call a man with a pole in his leg?
No idea.
You call him Rodney. There you go.
Classic.
Thanks, Heff. You are a legend. We look forward to catching all of your content. So you can search up the Keeper League pod or the Keeper League podcast, and you'll be able to listen to some great advice there and follow on all the socials, because there's plenty of great info. You guys are doing an epic job. Thanks for your time.
No worries. Thanks for having me, boys.